Welcome to 1990. My name is Amanda O'Shea from the Serendipity Experience. This is the 1990 series, 90 little conversations, powerful little conversations with 90 fabulous people over 90 days. And I'd like to introduce the lovely Christian McNeill from Glasgow. How are you doing, Christian?
Oh, I'm really well, thanks, Amanda. It's lovely to see you again, and thanks for inviting me.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you. We've had some lovely times that we've spent together, and so this is giving thanks to people who have been on my journey and part of my experience. And I think we probably met. I don't know when, but on one of the Facebook groups or something. One of those. Maybe it was one of the recovery groups, or it was definitely within the Three Principles community.
I just remembered it was when you were possibly coming to start a rehab in Scotland, and we had a call. But it was one of those ones that was based on a misunderstanding, because I thought you were in Scotland traveling somewhere, but actually you were in Spain traveling somewhere. So it was one of those conversations where we both had the wrong end of the stick, or I certainly had the wrong end of the stick. I remember.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah. And you said, you said we'll meet up, and I was like,
yes.
Oh, are you in Spain? And yeah. So I remember now, and that never came off. But yes, and then I was looking out for local Three Principle facilitators that were in that area of Scotland. I remember now. So it must have been it must have been a couple of years ago.
At least, yeah.
And then we had I did a lovely course with you, an addiction course that you ran with Joe Bailey. An online course that was fantastic. And then you and I went on to do a little series, Understanding Habits. And then, of course, you were one of the guest facilitators on our retreat this year down in Hidden Paradise, the Love and Clarity retreat.
Yeah, in the south of Spain.
Yeah, it was. And I remember we met in person at Malaga Airport. The first time. So, but it's so funny when you do so much stuff online, or I mean, even anybody who's been watching this little series or a few of these sort of conversations, you feel like you've got to know people. You feel like you do, and then when you actually see them in real life, it's sort of so it feels like we've spent a lot of time together, although most of it's probably been online.
That's true. Yeah.
So looking forward to hanging out with you in America, in Minnesota next May, and we're both involved and with the conference, the Three Principles Addictions conference. So that's exciting stuff, and we'll be talking more about that very soon. I think we're about to release our details very shortly, aren't we? Put it up for sale. So yeah, I'll have another chat with somebody about that, and we'll get that promoted. But there's a nice title been given to this, Christian, The Power of Insight. And I'd love us to just touch on, what that even just means.
Yeah, it's a lovely experience, the experience of insight or realization, and it's something that we talk about a lot in the world of Three Principles, and yet it's not necessarily a new thing. It certainly wasn't for me that you get through coming to have an understanding of the principles, it's something that has occurred throughout my life, not as frequently as it does now. But I thought, I had a couple of examples for it that were quite important, quite big insights that occurred in my life. And one was way, way back when I was a student, and I was going down a particular kind of line in terms of my career. And I was just lying on a beach in Greece one summer, and we'd been given a certain advice by a professor on the university course I was on, and the professor was a bit of a madman, to be honest. And all of a sudden, in this beach, out of nowhere, I was completely relaxed. I had the realization or insight that his advice was just rubbish, and his advice was basically to the effect that a certain line of work was closed to me. That he was basically saying that me and people in my position could not become advocates or barristers. And I just suddenly had a moment of realization, out of nowhere. I wasn't thinking about it, that was rubbish. and that it was not closed to me. And in fact, what happened without any particular effort was my my direction changed in that moment. And about 5 years later, I qualified as an advocate. And that was one example. But another really, really important one was getting sober. I had a drinking problem in my 20s, and I got sober in my late 20s. But that happened, and it happened in a very different sort of situation, because it occurred. There was a moment of change, a moment of realization again. But I certainly wasn't lying on a beach in Greece. In fact, I was tripping around Edinburgh late on a Saturday night, drunk as a skunk, and I caught sight of myself in a shop window. Just hated what I'd become. And I knew a little bit about sobriety and recovery, and I up until that moment I didn't want it, and suddenly in that moment it all changed. I realized that I can't do this anymore. I realized I'm willing to do whatever it takes to have a different kind of life. And that really was a moment of shift that did not, it's just something popping up inside. That's how I see it. And that really has quite profound effects, or can have quite profound effects on, how life unfolds in the future. Now, it can also happen about very tiny things, but it's those had happened before I knew anything about the principles. And of course, it's only with the benefit of hindsight you can see how pivotal they were. But it is the point I'm trying to make is that it is an entirely natural human phenomenon that we don't have to, we don't have to train for or pray for or meditate for. That just comes up. And we talk about them a lot in the principles, and it seems to me that the more we understand the concept of insight, you both see that you had more of them than you realized in the past, often about smaller things than those kind of life-changing ones, but also they really start to show up on a daily basis.
And I think you're so right, because I love the way people talk about an insight, like a sight from within. I've heard Sydney Banks, one of his lectures mentions that a lot, a sight from within. But I think we're constantly having teeny little insights. That's how we live our lives. And it is that sort of, I don't know, to put other words that we might use, it is that kind of light bulb moment. It is that aha. It is that, oh, I never saw it like that before. It is that, like, coming out of the blue, something just pops up. But it's having it. It's not just an idea, is it? It's having a new idea for the first time, or seeing something fresh and from a different perspective for the first time, that has that kind of, oh my goodness. It is like an oh my goodness. And I know that there's something about insights that humans love to share their insights. And yet sometimes I think that can water it down a bit or dilute it a little bit, because when I see people have something that's really huge to them, and then they try and share that with somebody else, and somebody else might say, oh yeah, that's obvious. Like, yeah, no, everyone knows that. But I think being a coach, or being in that world where we see the power of insight, we see the look of insight, we listen to the laugh of insight. And realize that it is the tiny things that can make such a huge difference in somebody's life. So that, for me, there is power in insight, but it's also so powerful for us to just recognize the fact that we have insights, as opposed to even looking at the content of the insight.
Yeah, having an insight into the capacity for insight is that one thing seems to be utterly transformational for people.
Yeah. And there is something about the realization, really seeing that everybody has the capacity to realize, for example, that they're creating their own reality. I think even having that realization, like everybody has the capacity for it. whether they do or don't
Mm-hmm.
within this life. And the capacity is inside every single human being. So it's something that's from within. And it's magic. It's magic showing itself to us, right?
Yeah. And it's deeply reassuring, I think. You know, I was talking to somebody today, and she's really going through some challenges in her work, and in particular with her boss. And, you know, she was just very caught up in the detail of that, you know, and you know, which is fine, because sometimes you just want to have a sort of data dump of, you know, everything that's going on. But
drama.
Yeah.
A dose of drama.
Yes, exactly. Play the victim. But what's you know, what's lovely is she does know this, and although she doesn't, so it's a lovely thing. And I just bring this example because it just happened recently. But even though she doesn't have the solution to, you know, you know, it's definitely a challenging situation. There are definitely, you know, all sorts of kind of competing interests, and there's no obvious solution. But what she knows, and I know about her, is that a solution will present itself. She will have an insight or a series of insights about it, and she'll solve it. You know, that it will be okay, and it will be perfect, and there'll be an elegant solution that will pop up at some point. And that's the bit. I mean, it's really reassuring. It's a fantastic thing to know that whatever is happening in your life, fresh thinking will appear at some point.
Yeah. And that just reminds me of something that somebody said to me once, which was sort of trying to get the answer from somebody. What you were looking for was, well, tell me what to do, or tell me how it works, and I hear that a lot. Just tell me. And it's like, you know, like what's the answer? And it's almost like, well, I don't know the answer, but what I do know is that you do know the answer, or you have the answer available to you. You know. And there is something about going into that space, into the stillness, into the silence, getting quiet, listening to the little voice inside, all of that. You know, that's a really beautiful, like a beautiful place to see it. But insights can pop in any time.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that I don't know that I spend so long in those spaces. Because I'm quite a busy, you know, quite busy, quite high energied. But for me, it is that, whether it's unpacking the car, or in the shower, or I don't know, on the toilet, or washing up, or more menial tasks.
Yeah.
Where I see that I kind of hear insights. For me, there's that space which I have first thing in the morning, where you wake up and you're not quite awake. That's a really lovely space for me. I speak about that quite a lot. I hear some people talking about it when they go to sleep. It's like they're asleep, but they're not quite asleep. I don't really have that. My head hits the pillow and I'm gone. But when I wake up in the morning and you're in that, like, oh, that lovely space, it feels sometimes like insights are like queuing up. It's like,
Yeah.
do you know, in the aeroplane, if you live near an airport, and they're not allowed to land until 6 o'clock or 6:30 or 7 or whatever, and they're all hovering.
They're stacked.
Yeah. And sometimes it feels like that, you know, that kind of, it's like they're waiting because you've had that chance to just rest your brain and clear your mind and rest your body and not be involved. And so, you know, it is a powerful thing.
Yeah, I love that. I always, or very, very frequently, have insights at that point of the day. You know, just to clip about anything that, you know, hasn't been in my mind for ages, and then there's just a new thought about it, and it's lovely. It's, you know, it's.
And it is more like, well, I never saw it like that before. You know, we can get quite curious. You know, when we see something for the first time, I think I can only talk for myself, but often it's like you want to check in with people, like, do you know this? They're like, yeah, obviously. And so what's so common and obvious for somebody is so fresh and new for somebody else. And I think that's what's really lovely of seeing that another way I like to describe it is like, oh, that's never occurred to me before. You know, like this word occurred. I used to use that a lot more. I haven't been using that recently. I think I overused it, you know, a few years ago. But when I got to see, it helped me to be much more tolerant and much more patient, actually. But when I really got to see, like, oh, something that was so common sense, something that was so logical, something that was so, when I got to see in somebody else, okay, that has not occurred to them, that's available, or that's a way of looking at it, or that's a perspective. When somebody is caught up in something that might be, I don't know, behaviors that aren't serving them well, or making bad decisions, or those kind of, you know, low level of consciousness, in it, I really see that, right, it hasn't occurred to them.
And the occurred thing is right, because it's not a doing, it's a receiving. You know, they haven't, you know, we don't make it happen, it occurs to us. It's a thing that happens to us, or even despite us sometimes.
I think it was from you that I first heard, we are the recipient of experience. And I love that. I don't know if that's something that came up to you, or you heard that from somebody else, but I love that. We are the recipient of experience.
Well, that's how increasingly it you know, that seems clear to me, you know, that we take ownership of our thoughts. I heard somebody having a debate on the radio about how people should be sort of punished or just judge themselves for their thoughts. I thought, what madness is that? You know, you don't know what you're going to think next. You have no idea. I don't know what I'm going to think next.
No. But if you do believe that you create your own thinking, and you're having naughty thoughts, dirty thoughts, stinky thoughts, it feels like you're not, you know, that's who you are. You know, and exactly the same as what I used to think. I'm quite an ideas person, so I'm great, you know, I have ideas. So then, you know, you used to think like, well, I'm great. Why don't you think like me? You know, why don't you have these great ideas? Until you realise, oh no, they're not my ideas. They were just offered to me. They were suggested to me. They were presented to me to play with. They were so. You know, there's something beautiful for me. The more that people get an understanding of what I would describe of how thinking really works, how the thinking system really works, things drop into place. The jigsaw pieces come together. The story feels like it, you know, it makes sense. All the boxes are ticked. That's what happened for me anyway. Being introduced to this understanding that we commonly call the three principles, or the inside out understanding, or whatever words are put at it suddenly was like, wow, that explains all human behavior to me. Not condoning all human behavior, but seeing the innocence behind, you know, behind human behavior.
And what's lovely is there's nothing kind of new to learn or do or practice, but just by observing what is now and what always has been, and what other people describe. You know, I'm thinking of lots of writers describe books being written, you know, that just seemed like it was writing itself, and that seems to me to be insight, you know. And so it gives an explanation of what's always been happening. And I just come back to that reassurance that we're never going to run out of insight or fresh ideas, and particularly when we have insight into how we're creating our own experience. It's a game changer, because it raises the possibility of being at peace in the face of anything. You know, it takes so much burden away, so much striving away.
Isn't that cool? You know, that there's this infinite fountain, this infinite internal fountain of peace and wisdom and common sense and fresh ideas and creativity and resilience and all those other things that we see, always available to us when we get out of our own way. I mean, it is we say these things again and again, and even myself seeing it like, wow, that is so true. I'm the only one that gets in my own way. And I do it every day.
Don't we all?
Yeah. So, Christian, that's really lovely. Thank you for bringing that subject to the 1990 series.
Thanks for asking me. It's lovely to connect with you, Amanda.
And it's really been a pleasure. And I think that's just that's a nice place to say cheerio.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Take care.
Of love. Lots of love to you and everyone up there in Glasgow and anybody who's listening from wherever you are in the world. See you all soon.
Thanks, Amanda.
Bye.